Today, we are witnessing the celebration of Yom Ha'atzmaut, which means the Day of Independence. This takes place in the middle of Sefira Ha'omer. It takes place when we count the Omer. And the Omer is described in the 23rd chapter of Vayikra, that you should count the Omer offering, and then it says in verse 14, you should not eat any bread, any type of grain product, ad etzem hayom hazeh, until the essence of this day, which is the second night of Pesach. It's called etzem hayom hazeh. Etzem also means a bone, it means strength. And the day has strength. The second day of Pesach has special strength. And on that day, when there's a temple, Beit HaMikdash, we bring an offering, it says for all generations. Next verse, 15, we should count from the morrow of the Shabbat. Shabbat is the first day of Pesach, from the day when you bring the Omer. And it says again, later on, concerning counting it for 50 days. And it says on verse 21, you should call Ve'etzem hayom hazeh. That means at the end of the count of the Omer, Techukat olam v'dorotechem, all generations. That's the festival of the first fruits. Also again called Etzem hayom hazeh. The beginning and the end of count of the Omer emphasizes Etzem hayom hazeh. So we see Sefira Ha'omer has a great deal to do with Etzem, Atzmaut, independence. We can say the count of the Omer teaches us what is the significance of true independence. If you go to this a bit more deeply, so we have this word Etzem used throughout the Chumash and the rest of the Bible, and it is emphasized with regard, as we already explained, the whole essence of the beginning of the barley harvest, which starts on the second night of Pesach, and the beginning of the wheat harvest, is the difference between an animal whose main fodder comes from barley, and a human being whose main fruit, staple diet, comes from wheat. And these are the two different offerings. In other words, to come from the level where we were slaves in Egypt, physically, mentally, reduced to zombies. That's how we begin. We're still animals, even though Hashem Yisbarach brought us already out of Egypt. But we pulled it out. We were not at that level. But it has a great importance how we were pulled out. We've got to work ourselves day after day to reach the level that we can deserve the term of being a human being, which is on Shavuot, when we received the Torah. Then we were ready. It took 50 days of advancing from the lowest level to the highest level of human behavior. That's the deeper significance of counting the Omer, as we often describe. And that's the concept of Etzem. So, what lies behind this? There's a repeated summons from God, from Hashem, to the people of Israel. One thing you have to be careful about when you get the land of Israel, because all this is connected with the greatness of the land of Israel. The main Omer counting and the celebration basically was in the temple period. So, you have to be very careful, it says. Never say, Kochi v'otzem yadi asali et ha'chayil hazeh. Baruch Hashem, you will find success in the harvest, success in the economy, every aspect. Then you should never say that it is my strength and the force of my power, Otzem Yadi, which had produced this success, this victory in wars, and this coming to the highest level of the economy. This all, don't say it's you. It's not you because you're Jews. What does it mean to be a Jew? The word Jew comes from Yehudi. Yehudi is the name given to that son of Yaakov and Leah, and the name was given because the root is Al-Ken Odeh Hashem, it's Hoda'ah, thanksgiving. We should never forget thanksgiving. Whatever we have as a nation, all comes from God, not from our own efforts. Whatever wealth and success you have in life, you must give thanks to the one who gave it to you, which is God. You do action, but don't say it's mine. If you say it's me, then ultimately you're going to lose the land of Israel, the blessings of Israel, it will disappear. That's the lesson, most important lesson of Atzmaut, to be independent. Now, this is the whole concept. Even it says, what's the concept of the menorah? Lo b'chayev, lo b'koach kim bruchi. What's Hashem say? You think through strength. That's for the second temple period. The same message was given to the prophet Zechariah. Do not think that you will be successful in the second temple period, and you're having a new temple, new commonwealth, if you're going to think it's got to do with warfare. Yes, there'll be wars as well, defense. But you should know, you'll only be victorious Baruchi if you recognize Lo B'chai. The whole essence of the people of Israel is to emphasize in this world we have to attribute, sometimes we have tried to reach success as a nation or as individuals. We've got to know it all comes from God. That's the essence of a Jew. Because Yehudi means, you say, Yehudi is the name which is given to all Jews. They were led by Yehuda, because Yehuda was one in his life. He expressed the concept that we have to give thanks to the one who's the source of all success, all victories. So this is the important principle. Now, when I was a young man here in Israel,
still are.
I learned in Yeshiva of Hebron. At that time, the head of Yeshiva of Hebron was Rabbi Yechezkel Tzana, who was, apart from being a very great scholar and a saint, he was also one who expressed in his talks enormously wide and deep concept of the significance of morality and what lies behind it. And they just published one of the Hebrew weeklies, dailies even. They published an article that he wrote 50 or 60 years ago. It's about the time when I benefit also from his great wisdom. So I want now, in fact it says, Chacham adif min avi, that in a certain way, the wise teachers of our nation are even greater than the prophets. And I was so impressed by this, and the relevance of it for today, even more than 60 years ago when I was studying there. He said like this, he said in recent period, by the way, my son-in-law, Rabbi Yechezkel Farbstein, is his grandson, and he carries his name, Yechezkel. So, this is the beginning of his article. He said, in more recent times, the nations of the world, many of them, you say all of them to some extent, they have a strong spirit of reaching independence, called Atzmaut. And they regard that if they are independent, they will reach the greatest happiness and success for the nation. And the truth is, Israel is similar. But we must say that the source of the people of Israel, from Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, coming from the rock from which they were hewn out. I think he chooses this phrase specifically because the term the rock of Israel was accepted by everybody in the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence says we have to thank the rock of Israel, to Israel, to Machzatan. Who was the rock of Israel in the eyes of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? It was God. These were holy mountains. They did not have as their aim in life that the ultimate purpose should be independent strength. And people sometimes don't realize that they are making that which should be a means into the end. It's true, independence can be a means to have great blessing in every way, but it's not the ultimate end and purpose of life. Because there's a verse, the house of Israel is not like the nations of the world. This is expressed many times, especially by the prophet Yechezkel, who's called the Ben Adam. Yechezkel was a prophet for the nations, but even more so, a prophet for the people of Israel to fulfill our role to give spiritual leadership to the nations. We know that the nations of the world, they have based even their cultural life upon materialism. And it's true, there are great powers, even superpowers, who deny the power of the Spirit. And in their world, they only see things which are material. And in a certain way, if you go to the roots of it, they think whatever a person can have an understanding of in the world is just a question of his sense perception, 5 senses. And therefore we have to develop that practical aspect of life, external aspect, and try to reach the highest level, individual and certainly for the nation. In a certain way, he says, they and their donkeys, they eat from one fodder basket. In other words, the donkey also thinks. The only thing, chamor, is only interested in its food. And we have other aspects also. Certainly, we also have the cultural aspect, the spiritual, but that is only a means to reach the highest blessing. He said, even those nations who we regard as being nations of culture and religion, but frequently their culture and religion are not really their essence, not their ultimate aim. And they don't understand the concept which is basic to Judaism, that the Torah has placed us into a situation that we meditate in the Torah by day and by night. Here I will add the comments of Rav Hirsch. Nege means ege, steering. They don't drift through life, they steer through life. And the Torah gives us a steering wheel, a sense of direction. And we do not regard spiritual matters as disturbing the body, but amongst the nations of the world, often their culture and even their religion is there primarily to reach materialistic ends. And many of them, they do have an aspect of strong religion in their lifestyle, frequently it should not disturb, it should not have pricks of conscience. And therefore, really they want to fulfill their more materialistic desires. Like he gives an example here from British culture. We know some of the elite of British culture, and they're certainly cultivated people and manners and believe in morals, but who's going to be successful in the golf match is more important than anything else. For example. So he says, it's really the physical things that rule over them. And the spiritual matters are there to give more color and beauty to the environment and to themselves as well. And for them, much more important to have good banquets, to celebrate independence, in order to free the body from having to subject itself to higher levels. So, amongst the people of Israel also, said, there are so many Jews who become assimilated to the ways of the non-Jews, and they have adopted their culture. But still, for them, what is important? Sports, entertainment, theatre, concerts. It does certainly bring them a higher level than the more brutal nations. But still, for these Jews who assimilated their ways, they're leaving aside a higher level. And we find even Jews who are observant, Torah mitzvah, but they also dance to some extent around this golden calf. That means atzmaut, physical. Is that really freedom? On the contrary, to some extent, to subject oneself to the concepts that the major way of celebrating is sports events, strengthen the body. It's helpful, but it's not the essence of Jewish independence. It says, it's true that physical freedom was always considered a very worthwhile level to reach, and will ultimately, is promised by the prophets, but it should be a merkava l'shechina. It should be a chariot which carries the divine presence. Chariots are made of material things. And if not to go and compete with the other nations with our physical blessings that we have. This applies to the individual, applies also in the establishment of the state. Because the concept of independence of the state is mistaken if one concentrates upon the physical and territorial successes, even the geographical possessions. Because if we think of the Jewish people, which is such a small nation, and the land we have is such a small land, are we deceiving ourselves that we can become a superpower? And will that help us to become a superpower? When we know quite well that if we start with power to be the main aim of the people of Israel, the superpowers can, from simple supervision, knock us out from the map of the world with ease. We're going to make, so what do? Make ourselves dependent upon the superpowers and make out that we're competing with them. Is that going to help us? So we have to learn from the long history we have. When did we have true independence? If we go back in the history of the nation, even the first kingdom, when we were given the ability to drive away most of the enemies that surrounded the small land of Israel. Where was there a time when the nations of the world respected us? We did have power. We had enormous blessing. But many of the kings didn't go in the way of Hashem. They assimilated to the ways of the nations around. Many of the kings, unfortunately, even the Davidic line, they followed idolatrous worship and introduced them to the country in severe ways. And they had many battles with the enemies. They were not treated with respect. But when did we have it? In the time of King Solomon, who developed ways of always being true to the path of the Torah. Although he managed to achieve in his time peace with all the nations around, not just peace, one of the richest and most successful economic developments. Then what happened? That he became respected from all sides. He was independent. Otherwise, he used all his wealth to go and strengthen the way of the Torah. Unfortunately, his son didn't follow in his way. But during that period, he was able to make peace with all nations around. And what did he use it for? To spread wisdom. The wisdom of the Torah. And they came from all over the world to learn from his wisdom. And Hashem blessed him. Because why? Because he subjected his wealth. And according to the saints, he went a little bit too far and led him astray in the end. Different ways. And brought also the splitting of the kingdom ultimately. But during his time, they all took from him. The nation world recognized that here lies the source of wisdom. So he says that our mother is our Torah. And the way of the mother is that she wants to pass on her spirit to the children, that they should be faithful to the mitzvot. But what happens today, speaking of this time, that when we're coming back to the Torah and to our land, first, when they come to the land, we know that in Eretz Israel there's much more Torah. But the Torah is mourning. Why? Because so many Jewish children come to the land without being introduced to the Torah. They think it's a land like other lands. They have to learn the language, very good, very important. And here, they come here, many of them, and are not given any understanding of the special role of the Jewish state. I think here, let's go back to you've really read the original work of Herzl. I mean, Herzl tried many different ways to remove anti-Semitism. And he came to the conclusion, like many others did, the only way to remove anti-Semitism is to build a state like other states. And he did say, famous saying, Im tirzu ein zu agada, if you will it, it won't be a legend, it will become a reality. What's the reality? He describes it in his Jüdischen Staat, Jewish state, that Israel should be a land like other lands. I mean, he knew, hardly knew any Hebrew, and he was assimilated, didn't know anything about Judaism. He knew about the problem of anti-Semitism and tried to find different solutions. One of the solutions was he went to see the Pope and said, maybe we should try to make all the Jews into Christians. That was the one time they thought that's not going to work. He tried many different ways. It's not his fault, he had no education.
Okay.
So it's in his Jüdische Staat, a Jewish state, he looks forward to a time when Jews should live in their own land like all the other nations, to find their independence, to feel they can have, they should have places also for criminals, gambling, places for also immoral places, like all the other states have. Yes, of course you give everyone, make it a democratic state where everybody can have whatever religion or irreligion he wants to follow, but be a state like all other states. And if that happens, anti-Semitism will cease. Well, it's true, that has happened. But what has it done? It's increased anti-Semitism. That's all the time. It's made the neighbors, when Jews have been given, everyone knows that, have been given a greater mind somehow than other nations, other groups. Where does it all come from? No, today they read the analysis. It comes from the oral law. That gives a greater mind. Nurses. It also, I'll give you an example, happened to me. The highest grammar school in England is the Manchester Grammar School. And they've got the most brilliant students from Manchester, also other places. They go to that school, and it's got the highest level of entries into the American Ivy League colleges, and also into Oxford and Cambridge. And therefore, I had 200 of the brightest Jewish youngsters from England came to Manchester Grammar School. And I was the chaplain, looked after them, gave general talks, and there was a group of the sixth formers going in for the high level, and I gave them a Gemara shir, which they enjoyed. So the parents objected. After all these years, they've got to work hard to get the high points in the scholarships to all the big colleges. Why do you take time off to go and study the Talmud? That's not right. So the high master of the school gave me a letter in which he said he wants all the students not to give up their Talmud shir. Why not? Because he says he finds by them learning the Talmud, they're better in every other subject, because it trains the mind. It's a far better exercise of the mind than chess playing. We know Jews are chess players, and they're Nobel Prize winners, because even if they themselves don't learn, but it's the attrition so many generations that increases the mental capacity. They can do more. And who knows today? In Korea, for example, many of the schools, they teach them Talmud. They translate it. Why? Not because of religion. They follow other religions, but in order to improve the mind. I'm not surprised. Let's say the Nobel Prize winner for games theory is a big Talmud Chacham. In fact, he can. There are many difficult sections in the Gemara where you've got to have highest level mental activity. So but when they come here, so many Jews, they don't know the Tanakh, or if they're given a course by the Jewish Agency or the Hebrew University in Tanakh, is the distorted Tanakh of the Bible critics, who basically also were anti-Semitic, and they go and cut up the Bible in different sources. And it's an illogical approach to literature, apart from anything else. And they don't understand the real significance which the biblical books are taught together with the oral tradition. That brings a fantastic higher level. By the way, today we find it here in Israel. The Russians, many of them, they were bred and they were cultivated on the basis of Gnosticism, if not atheism. And they come here, many of the parents, and with special high-level schools led by learned teachers who know all the Torah, to go and teach them, apart from what are called perhaps the non-Torah subjects on the highest level, and they also taught Torah in all its other moral and intellectual levels. And as a result, the parents are willing to do it, but they see the difference between those schools and the schools where there's no attachment properly to Torah learning. So it's Kechok Mizrach Mimara. I've heard it here because we work together with them, and the parents, they themselves, in some of them, they continue with their not yet religious beliefs, but they say these schools, they're making a success of our children in behavior and into dedication to serious study and to be enjoying study, which is not cultivated in the schools that don't have Torah. So this is what's happening today, in his time, also in our time, that hundreds of young people are brought to become aliyah or to come here for courses, and they don't realize what enormous cultural wealth there is from the people of Israel, which is admired by the nations of the world. And instead, they have to protect themselves from violence and drug addicts. So many different problems face those who don't have the power of Torah. So this is, he says, why is it that here, let's have true Jewish independence. Independence means be strong, as we see in the word Atmaut, be strong in what Hashem has given us as Jews. And a Jew is someone who gives thanks. Why is it that, of course it's entered even, to some extent, into the traditional lifestyle of many young people, that they're not taught the principle of gratitude sufficiently. And therefore they take their parents for granted, and the arrogance increases in place of they being cultivated to make a Kiddush Hashem, to sanctify the name of God in the right manner. So Rav Sana, he brings it, here they made even, this is it's one of the most favorite, what do you call them? People who make comic pictures.
Cartoons.
Huh? What's it called?
They are called
On
Caricatures.
the caricature he makes the nations of the world riding on a lion, with the person on top, Israel, carrying the Sefer Torah. And underneath, you've got nation of the world, a lion is out to trap those who want to make a state. Small state. I think that expresses this message.
Is Rob Sarah's son? Whose cartoon is that?
Yes,
Yes, it says there are.
no, it's their expert on caricatures,
Oh, it's the.
dealing with independence. So look, I've only brought you certain parts here, but it goes on to describe something very important, which is now, today, a crucial issue, and that is the Supreme Court of Justice. The Supreme Court of Justice is based on Western values. You should know that you should know that the Constitution of Justice accepted by the State of Israel is defined by the Supreme Court of Justice, which does include, with many of them, a knowledge of Jewish law. But it's not essential. Some of them don't have a knowledge of Jewish law. Because law in Israel is based upon an intermingling of common law, of Roman law, and of Ottoman law, as a mixture. And the judges can take from whatever sources they want. And the Supreme Court of Justice is elected by the organization of judges in Israel. It's not elected democratically. It's elected from the Association of Judges, and it turns out in most periods, most of the supreme judges and the other major judges, they have formed a clique, let's call it, of democratic values taken from the nations of the world. But what has happened is, you'll find, if you will study American law, there's a more positive acceptance in American law from instances which exist in Jewish law. And there are many articles and books written by American experts on law where they praise very much Jewish law, whilst the Supreme Court of Justice frequently disregard Jewish law. That's become, there was a great battle at the beginning of the state whether laws of marriage and divorce should be allowed to continue to be rabbinical on the basis of the rabbinical courts, or whether the Supreme Court of Justice can go against it. And although in all other matters they were given authority to disregard Jewish law, but the one area where the nation decided together, it was agreed upon that if that will happen, then the State of Israel will become a Kulturkampf between two opposing groups, and creates great problems. Because once it comes into families and so on, it could work no more. But today it's being threatened. Today it's worse than it was when Rav Sana gave this talk. It's now becoming possible. And if that will happen, we're going to develop gradually two nations within one nation. Either those who keep to rabbinic law, or those who don't. But if the marriage situation is kept, it's got to go. Not because where does it come from? It comes mainly from extreme reformers who say, why should we have to follow the laws of Protestant and the laws of marriage of the rabbis? We can reform it and be like, have it more like some of the Gentiles have it. So today it's become a severe problem. He deals with this already 50 years ago, saw that problem. He says, if that's going to happen, there'll be a big split. Meanwhile, we're fortunate that the in numbers, more religious Jews have settled here, and also many more Jews who knew nothing and became religious. So therefore, the power is growing. And therefore, it's going to come to a head in some way or another. And this is one of the battles taking place at the moment. So we've got to preserve also the essence that this is a Jewish state. We know, let's say we know that, that our peace partners refuse to call it a Jewish state. And let's say the Prime Minister has always said it only agrees to a Jewish state. And there's obvious reasons for this, because otherwise, if the others will take over, let's say we call it a democratic state, the birth rate within the present borders of Israel, if it continues like it is, the birth rate of the Muslims is much more than that of the Jews. In a short time, the Muslims will be, the Jewish people will become a small minority in Israel, and the rest will become members of the democratic state, but most of them will be Muslims. And then they might talk about democracy and talk about it and even sign contracts and so on, but it's meaningless. What's happened now? It is such a state. The King of Jordan, he means it well, but he said he can make an agreement that if the whole of the West Bank is given over to be under a Muslim supervision, would be theirs entirely under them. Jews will be allowed to live in different parts, no problem. And the Arabs obviously take over, they'll be the majority. And of course, certainly they want to take over Jerusalem, and that on that condition they're ready to meet. But it mustn't be called a Jewish state, it's got to be they can call it the State of Israel. The State of Israel is going to include more Arabs, Muslims, than it's called Jews. And they says he's going to make a consensus in the Arab nations. They're going to put this forward at the next meeting in Washington. You know, King of Jordan and the others, together with Abu Mazen, who denies the Holocaust. And we know what that can bring to. They deny the Holocaust, but they even say that it's the Jews who are victimizing the Palestinians with the Holocaust against them. They twist everything, and that's how they through the power of their propaganda and their concepts, it's a very difficult situation. But we have to say, we are here for peace. We don't want war. This is the whole question. Look, it's very interesting also that although the State of Israel has refused so far to mention the name of God in its Declaration of Independence, unlike America and England and many other more modern nations, and also they refuse to change their national anthem to bring in God, although the essence of being Jews to give thanks to God. We have to go back to the essence of the Jewish people, represented by the symbols of the State of Israel. What are the symbols? The menorah. What does the menorah mean? Not by power, not by success, economic, agricultural, or political, or military success, but only bruchi, with my spirit, says Hashem. That's how you can have the second temple period. Mitzvah Hashem will get the third temple period. And that's one symbol. That's the flag. The flag of Israel represents, the flag of Israel, even the Magen David. The Magen David represents the principle of counting the Omer, which that's the giving of the God. Counting the Omer is equivalent to what was written on the shield of David HaMelech, the Magen David. And the colors are tzitzis. What tzitzis? Always keep in mind, at the edge of the awareness of human being is the power of God. That's the basic message of tzitzis. So the message is then the symbol. So the symbol of the menorah and the symbol of the blue and white flag, and these are spiritual symbols. But we've got to actualize it. We'll be independent when we will actualize those symbols in Mitzvah Hashem. And I hope that this article of Cheskel Sana will bring stronger power to Teshuvah, and as a result, if the people of Israel will recognize and get more knowledge, because I think the whole of the question depends on how much we can spread the message of Judaism to those who don't have it yet, be it amongst Jews or amongst Gentiles. In that way, we can change the face of human history.
So how are we going to achieve peace?
By spreading Torah values.
With the Muslims?
Telling them also, we can't, not by fighting, but by educating. Because even says, it says on the wall of the United Nations, quote the Pasuk, Asher lo yilbedu milchama. They won't any more learn to try to achieve things through warfare. We try to achieve things through spreading peace.
Must we give the land back?
Huh?
Must we give the land back?